Welcome to Bedtime Stories, the Mind at Midnight podcast dedicated to exploring the ways sleep impacts mental health and overall well-being. Our goal is to educate, inform, and provide practical tips for improving rest, resilience, and mental wellness. We've identified sleep as a critical factor affecting youth and adults alike, with both risk and protective factors tied to mental health outcomes. In episode 1, we'll be exploring the connection between sleep and mental health in the military. We'll hear firsthand how lack of rest affects focus, mood, and resilience in high-pressure environments, and discuss strategies service members use to maintain both sleep and mental wellness under demanding circumstances. Joining us today is Matthew Hernandez, a history teacher and full-time graduate student who brings passion for both education and lifelong learning. He also serves our country in the U.S. Navy as a Master at Arms First Class, balancing the worlds of teaching, studying, and military service. I'm very excited to hear about his experience and advice he can offer to our listeners.
Hello, my name is Matthew Hernandez. I am a Master at Arms First Class in the United States Navy Reserve, attached to Maritime Security Squadron Detachment 5 out of San Antonio, Texas. I am a history teacher in Cy-Fair ISD, and I am a full-time graduate student at Texas Southern University pursuing a master's degree in history.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So my first question I have about your sleep is, how does your sleep schedule look during active duty or training?
So I've been on deployment twice, and both times been overseas in a combat zone. The sleep that we get, they try to protect it as best they can. Given the nature of my job as a Master at Arms, it's basically military police. And so we're the first line of events. There's often times that we're either pulled away for training that go beyond our normal shift hours, whether that's training exercises that are afloat or in land-based security operations. The sleep that we don't get affects the mission, because obviously we don't get any days off that aren't scheduled. So oftentimes what ends up happening is that if you're good at your job and you know what you're doing, they will pull you for the special training sessions. And as a squad leader and as a watch commander, my section normally gets tagged because we like to hold ourselves to that high standard. And because of that high standard, we often get tasked for doing the extra duties for training, and it does cause morale issues. I can speak firsthand that I've gone to little to no sleep, maybe 3 hours in a 24-hour period, having to pull 16-hour shifts either on base or afloat.
Thank you so much. Okay, so question 2 about your sleep is, what is the biggest challenge to getting quality sleep in the military?
The biggest challenge, I would have to say, is honestly, you can't really focus on the fact that you're not getting sleep. You're worried about the guys that are next to you. You're worried about your section. You're worried about your shift and making sure those guys come home. And that's what puts you through those long hours, especially when it's a 12-hour shift and it's hour 9, hour 10, and you're wondering what's going back on at home, the time difference. You're alone, but you're not alone. And the guys that you have with you, next to you, they're the ones that are keeping you together. A lot of it will depend on the leadership that you have in your section. So as a watch commander and running your own section, you look out for your guys. You look out for your junior sailors as best you can, and you try to take care of them. I would say that if you focus on the negative, that's what's going to make that shift longer. That's what's going to make that deployment longer. As far as the sleep part of it, you try to get sleep where you can. If you're in a 2-man section or a 2-man post, you can do 1 up, 1 down, which means that one of you takes a 30-minute nap while the other one pulls that watch, and then when that person is tired, you tap them out, and you keep going. My job is a lot of solo work, so unfortunately, there are some health concerns. We have to pump ourselves with either caffeine, coffee, that I felt my heart rate actually increase because I'm not a big caffeine person. And so a lot of the drinks that we have are either Monster or Red Bull, And a lot of the guys in the military end up picking up smoking because of the constant hand motion it requires. And obviously we know the health concerns with smoking, but that's one of the ways that a lot of the guys will stay awake on duty, is by either chewing tobacco or taking often smoke breaks.
So would you say that having a team around you helps you get more sleep?
Having a dependable team to rely on definitely gets you more sleep. If you're in a good section that everybody's trained up and qualified to that pay grade, me being an E6 and a watch commander, I'm responsible for that. So if we can work together and if we can have all the shifts, and if one of the guys is like, I can't do it, then we have enough manpower to make the shift. I like to send some guys home if I can.
Thank you so much. So now we can move on to some mental health questions about your experience in the military. So firstly, how does sometimes getting that lack of sleep impact decision making or maybe your focus in certain high pressure situations?
Yeah, it definitely affects the focus because, especially in my line of work in the military, you have to make decisions quick on your feet, and you don't have time to second guess. Whether that's cuffing somebody, putting them in a hold, or even drawing your weapon in the line of duty, you have to be able to make that decision in real time, and you can't think about the effects that are going to come after it. I would say that the lack of sleep does definitely affect that decision-making process. It's not as fluid. You hesitate. You're taking second guessing, and that's what gets you killed, is that second guess. Like I said before, though, if you got a squared up section and you're qualified at pay grade and you can get guys to cover down, it does make your life easier. But if you have new guys and you got to train them up, then you got to pull that extra weight to make sure that they are trained.
Thank you so much. So would you say, do you think that lack of sleep possibly can make service members more vulnerable, maybe to also physical danger, but maybe to depression or burnout?
100%. That's the leading cause right now in the military, is burnout, especially in high MOSs or ratings, that more combat related jobs in the military. The lack of sleep is the number one complaint that they get. And it has to do with the fact that it is high intensity. You are getting armed up with body armor, with bullets, with Kevlar, and you're responsible for everything that you carry on you, and then you're responsible for holding it for 12 to 14 hours and making sure that you're also turning in all that same equipment, because if not, then you could face disciplinary actions. And then the lack of sleep on top of that, it's stressful. It's stressful because you're in charge of guys that are junior to you. You're answering to people that are above you. And the number one thing that makes the shift goes by if you feel well rested. And we certainly see that in the military today, that certain MOSs like 11 Bravo, which is infantry, 31 Bravo, which is military police, master at arms, or security force from the Air Force, those high intensity jobs, they're not being manned. We're undermanned in those areas, and now we're pulling extra weight and extra duty to fill those watches that need to be filled for base security operations. So we're already spread thin.
Wow, thank you so much for your insight. Well, we have a lot of people within my school and in our community that are looking to go into the military after high school. And so I was wondering, what kinds of strategies do you use to improve sleep during deployments or long shifts?
To improve sleep during deployments or long shifts, I would say that for people who are joining the military, you need to do your research on what job you're going to do and know that there are going to be times where it does get a little hard, but that's what you signed up to do when you serve this country, and you're thinking about the greater good. So you have to find that motivation within yourself to keep going, to be in a unit, to be behind a post, to be in a tower for 12, 14 hours with 3 or 4 guys, and you're relying on each other, and that's what you're going to get. That's what's going to make you go through that whole evolution. You're as a service member with 7-8 years and 2 deployments underneath my belt. I would say that it's the guys next to you that keep you up. It's the guys that keep you sane. It's the guys that it's the laughter, it's the joking that you do to make that shift go by. And 20 months of active duty time is a lot to be away from your family, but they become your family when you're away, and they become your support system. So I would say join an MOS or enter a rating that you're going to want that camaraderie. That camaraderie is what's going to get you through, despite being tired, despite not wanting to go to work that day. It's the guys that get you through. It's not anything else.
Oh, thank you. Do you think that, are there resources in the military that specifically help service members deal with sleep and mental health issues?
Yes, the DoD, or now the Department of War, has done a great job now listening to soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines across all branches, and men and women, to have mental health clinics and psychologists and psychiatrists available to you in camp. I was stationed at Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti, Africa, and both times we had mental health awareness programs, a mental health advocacy, where it was all confidential. You could go talk to that person without fear of being reprimanded or being considered weak. And the military has done in recent years push strides to advocate for mental health. I will say that they're still learning what that means. And the current administration, they're adjusting to what that reality is, because the military is finally figuring out that we are humans, that we're not just drones, and we do suffer. We do suffer in silence, and now we have a policy that if something's wrong, you say something, and the chain of command is obligated to report it, check on you, see how you're doing. And as a watch commander, it's oftentimes my responsibility to check on my junior guys, my E4s, my E3s, that this is their first time away from home. This is their first time being away. They don't have a family, they don't have a support system, so you undoubtedly become that father mentor figure for them on deployment. You walk them through everything, and you walk them through their available resources. We have all kinds of them, but I know specifically in Camp Lemonnier, we had 4 people that were civilian contractors that were dedicated to the sole purpose of mental health and mental health awareness. The first American Red Cross was one of them. They are protected, and so you have confidentiality within those resources as well.
Well, it's great to know that the military and also the people within the military are taking steps to support people through with their mental health. So now we can move on to some sort of questions that piggyback off of that, but from your perspective. So what advice would you give to new recruits about protecting their sleep and mental health from the start?
From the start, that my first experience in the military was going through RTC at Great Lakes, and that's where you get your first wake-up call that this isn't a normal job. You're already sleep deprived once you get there, and you're going to be sleep deprived for the next 8 weeks. You're going to have to find something within you to dig deep and to figure out if this is what you really want to do. And if it's something you really want to do, then you're going to push yourself. As far as getting sleep, once that's over, and that's kind of the misconception with the military, is that it is just another 8 to 5 job, or it's another shift type work, that you go home and you prioritize what's important, right? To eat right, to go work out. I often found times that overseas, after I worked out, I slept better because my body was already tired. It was a mental break for me to kind of step out of the reality of my everyday routine. And my body felt better. And so now there's a lot of wellness programs that are connected to mental health in the military that, if you go to so many wellness events, you could get an extra day of liberty, a day off, basically. So from the get-go, you're going to be tired, but just know that there are things in place once you get past that initial training phase that are going to help you, and they're going to make sure that they do have your best interests. You are serving a greater mission, but the two of them are starting to form where they are being complemented with each other, right? How can we support the warfighter, not just with bullets and guns, but also in their emotional and mental health state as well?
Well, it's great to know that like new recruits can know that they're going to be supported in wherever they venture into the military. So throughout all of your journey, what lessons about the connection between sleep and mental health have you carried into your own life?
I'd say definitely, as far as sleep goes, as a teacher and a father and full-time grad student and service member, there isn't a lot of time for sleep. But you make the sleep that you get count. You don't stay up on your phone. You don't waste time, just scrolling through TikTok or YouTube or Facebook Shorts or whatever they're called, and you make that time count. You make your downtime count for you, and you try to sleep as much as you can when you can. And that's really hard in certain environments, especially being deployed. For example, I was on night shift at Camp Lemonnier, which is a pseudo air base. So we had C-130s and Chinooks, Ospreys. The Ospreys would go off at all hours during the day, and they would literally shake your living compartment, and that was hard to sleep through during the day. But you just kind of have to relax your mind, do something mindless, and just kind of float away into sleep and hope that that's enough sleep that you're going to need to get through that shift.
Well, thank you so much for answering my questions. Is there anything else you would like to say to the listeners of this podcast?
As a service member in the military, it is about the mission, but it's also about your self-advocacy. If you're having issues with something, you need to say something, because no one else is going to advocate for you. There's a bunch of programs in the military that do respect and are doing better to understand mental health. I'm not saying they're perfect, but they are trying in their best way to make room for that. And I think that's helping the warfighting mission, because if you have guys who are sleep deprived and they're not at their best mentally, they're not going to go out and defend the fort. They're not going to defend the FOB, and they're not going to hold it down because they're tired, they're exhausted. And anything we've learned through military history is that it is the guys that are boots on ground that are pushing through those lines. And the enlisted men, which is what I am, they're the ones doing the brunt of the work. They're the ones that are staying up extra hours when the chiefs and the officers or the senior enlisted go home. We're left doing the task. And so we do rely on each other for a lot. We do try to cover down for each other as best we can, especially if we know we got a teammate that's struggling. So if you're looking to join the service, it is about the mission, but it's also more, I would say, just as important about the guys next to you that's going to take care of you, both physically and in mental health.
Well, thank you so much. That wraps up episode 1 of Bedtime Stories, the Mind at Midnight podcast. A big thank you for sharing your insight and experience on how sleep and mental health intersect in both military and everyday life. Your story reminds us that rest isn't just a luxury, it's essential for focus and overall well-being. So we hope today's conversation gave you a new perspective on the importance of sleep and maybe inspired you to take small steps toward improving your own sleep routine. Remember, taking care of your sleep is taking care of your mind. Thank you for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time as we continue exploring how sleep impacts mental health in different walks of life. Until then, take care of yourself and don't forget to get some rest.